ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Reference Point. I'm your host, Dave Cokerhook. This evening, I'm very pleased to have a returning guest here at the table, Mr. Sumant Pendharker, who was with us. I guess, Sumant, it was what, about 2 years ago almost that you were here on the show.
That's right, yes.
Back in 2013. Well, welcome back to Reference Point.
Thank you, Dave.
Now, when we talked the last time, we spent our time talking about a process that you're involved with that resulted in your writing a book targeted toward young adults, I think it was. Is that?
Yes, it's for preteens and teens.
Preteens and teens. And this was all about trying to get them, and parents that we come to understand, how to take a little bit more responsibility for their education so that they can take advantage of what the future has to offer here in the United States, all over the world, actually. Is that a fair statement?
That's absolutely right. It's the teenagers and preteens are the same all over the world.
Very
and
cool.
They face the same choices.
They do. They do.
That's right.
So I'm interested in understanding again how you came into this, because you have a technology background, right? You were with a high-tech firm here in Silicon Valley.
That's correct, yes.
And how did you end up involved as deeply as you are in the area of childhood education?
So back in the 90s, I was working for high-tech companies, and that was the pre-dot-com and then eventually the dot-com boom as well at that time. And I noticed one thing, that we were always hiring foreigners. And of course, I'm a foreigner myself too, but I came to study and then stayed on to work in the high-tech companies. But even so, it bothered me a lot that the talent that we were trying to recruit was coming from all over the world, but we were not able to recruit local talent.
Huh.
So I actually flew out to various parts of the world to try to recruit from other countries and bring them back. Because you know that at that point of time, the unemployment rate was around 2.9%, and we just couldn't find even a warm body to put in the spot.
Wow, yeah.
And so I took a step back, and at that point in time, I already co-authored 8 technical books. I was thinking of what else can I do which would be of some kind of importance for the society. And it dawned on me that I could perhaps write a book on career planning for teens.
Ah.
And so I set about writing a table of contents. And then I showed it to a few of my friends. And one of my friends, who's native born, she mentioned that the book is too late for 16 plus for career planning.
Too late?
Too late.
Okay.
Because kids make up their minds whether they will even finish high school between the ages of 10 and 14.
10 and 14?
Yes.
They decided, and when you're 10, you're still in middle school, right?
That's right. Yeah.
You haven't even gotten to the high school area yet. So between 10 and 14, they're deciding whether they're going to finish high school, which usually you finish when you're about 18, right?
It's about 17, 18.
17,
yes.
18,
Yes.
Wow.
And so it got me thinking that I should actually write a book for that age audience. And so I sat down and researched it for 2 years, and I wrote the book. And it's called Raising Yourself, Making the Right Choices.
Raising Yourself, Making the Right Choices. I think we have a graphic of what the cover of that book looks like. We're going to show that here now.
So. Good. And Dave, here's the interesting fact. The book has now been out for 14 years.
14 years, wow.
So published in 2001.
Right.
Maximum feedback that I've received on the book is from adults.
From adults?
And can you guess?
Which is interesting.
Can you guess what feedback they would have given me?
This is a great book for my kids?
The book is great for my kids was one of the opinions. But one of the most shocking part was what they said to me, and that is they learned something from the book.
The adults learned something from the book?
Yes.
What were they learning from the book?
Well, that's the interesting part. I guess somewhere along the way, along their own parenting, as in when they were being brought up, some portions of parenting were just completely missed out. And so the personal responsibility, the idea of being fair, the ideas of having certain values, peer pressures, they had no idea how they could handle those.
So you're saying that the adults didn't have that kind of experience or mentoring or whatever you want to call it when they were young, and so they didn't know how to do it for their children. Is that what I'm understanding you to say?
And that's right.
Wow.
And I also have phases in life in this book. So what somebody should do when they're from, say, 0 to 20 or 20 to 40 and 40 plus.
Now, are we talking about kids in general, adults in general? Are we talking about specific demographics? I mean,
across the board.
Across the board.
Here's a review that I have from, let me just bring that up real quick. This is from Mac McKinnon, publisher for the Fort Morgan Times in Colorado. He gave me a nice 3-column review that's really awesome. Helpful not only for teens or preteens, but also for parents of that age group. It is highly recommended reading.
Got it.
And this has repeated itself multiple times.
Okay.
Including an awesome review from Rebecca Johnson, one of the Amazon top 10 reviewers. She writes in there that I learned something 20 years late.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that 14 years ago, you wrote a book that has had an impact. But you've gone beyond that now, because haven't you started a new foundation that's building on the information that you've collected from all of this research and the results that have come from this, and looking to go further? Is it?
That's correct.
Okay.
So I've set up K-12 counts.
K-12 counts, okay.
Yeah. And with the idea being that high school graduation is absolutely critical.
All right.
And so currently the graduation rates are somewhere in the just around 80% or 81%.
So high school.
This is nationwide.
Okay, so let's talk about all right. So the key here, or a key, is to use high school graduation information as a metric that helps us understand what's really going on. I think we have a graphic too here of the high school grad rates that shows there's sort of a disparity here. You know, we've got kids graduate from college, kids that graduate from high school, kids that drop out of high school, and so and there's a lot more kids that drop out than I would have thought. You know, so how does this then tie back into K-12?
So let's do one thing. Let's go back to the original conversation, and that was around what the feedback that I received from the parents.
Right.
I want to continue that for just a bit. It'll make a lot of sense of why K-12 counts is so important and what I hope to achieve from that.
Good.
So along the way, with this feedback that I received from parents saying that they're learning something new from the book, I attended a class, a 12-week program called the Parent Project. I don't know if you've heard of that. The Parent Project is for helping parents deal with adolescent behavior of their children, obviously.
Deal with the adolescent behavior,
Yes.
okay.
And so I attended that class. It was offered by the Santa Clara County, the Deputy DA's office. And about 3 or 4 weeks into the class, I realized that these are parents who are coming after work. They're coming once a week from 6 to 9. So it's quite a sacrifice to be out learning certain things for the family. And I realized about 2 or 3 weeks of attending this, that if they are learning now how to discipline their own children, why not they going to learn how to help the children in their school? How are they going to learn about how to educate their children about what career options they have, how to help them plan for college? When are they going to learn that? And I heard nothing of that from any of the parents. The class focus is different, so I'm not going to say anything about the class focus. It's excellent class.
Right.
But where were not a single conversation amongst the parents about, hey, let's talk about what we can do for our kids.
How can we make their life better? What is it? How does education impact them? What do we need to be thinking about here, mom and dad, in order to help, you know, Janie and Joey achieve more than we've been able to achieve?
Right.
That's what I'm understanding you to be saying.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice. And here's really the biggest kicker. I wanted to teach a class on sound decision making for teens.
Okay.
And so I approached one of the cities up in Alameda County. And you know, a lot of the counties have parks and recreation, or they have those after-school programs and all sorts of other classes for just the short term, the 2 to 3 hour kind of classes.
Right.
And so I approached this particular city up in Alameda, and I sent a copy of my book to the director of parks. And one day after receiving the book, she calls me back and says, "Don't teach this class to the students. I want you to teach this to our parents."
Whoa.
And I was shocked. This book is for ages 10 to 14. Why am I going to be teaching some other parents of how they should make sound decisions? And that was actually a big turning point, because she was so adamant that she not only did not let me teach the class for the students, she actually helped me write the entry for the catalog for the upcoming whatever spring or whenever that session was. It was shocking that she would be so adamant about that. She was genuinely concerned about the parents.
Sumant, I want to dig into this just a little bit more deeply regarding geography. I mean, we're here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We have a huge diversity in population. We have a massive diversity in economic levels and that sort of thing. So what I'm trying to grasp here is whether or not the information that you've recognized and uncovered here is specific to what's going on here in Northern California, or I know you had something that you read that came from someone who looked at your book that was in Colorado, but is this really a national scope problem, or is this really a local scope problem?
I would be inclined to say it's a national level problem. I mean, the people who are in the Bay Area have come here from other states. Mm-hmm. So they are bringing with them the knowledge that they picked up along the way when they were young.
That's a good point.
So it's not just that it's only California-born people who are having this kind of needing this help. And so there are people coming from all over the country. I mean, I didn't keep track of everybody who came from where and who are coming up with this kind of a feedback.
Right.
But it would not be to guess. I mean, if you look at some of the data that we also have about how where the parents are lacking, and they need that help.
I think we actually have another graphic of that's a map of the United States that shows the different graduation rates from high school in a variety of states across the country. And so, some of them are not looking all that good. As a matter, I think California says 76 to 80% of kids graduate from public high school, and looks like the guys in the Midwest are doing pretty well, so they're doing something right. And the Northeast, I like that up there. I used to live in New Hampshire, but there's a lot of places in the country where it just doesn't seem to be as prevalent that the young person graduates from high school. Right. So what does that lead to?
So basically, we have to figure out what is the problem. Why is it that the kids are not getting the right help in their respective homes so they can graduate?
And if they don't, what does that lead to?
Well, if you really look at it, there are, again, a huge amount of studies on that those who don't even complete high school now, they're almost committing economic suicide. And this is not my words. These are words that are quoted on the internet. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is that if you even look at the current statistics, people who don't have high school graduation, they have the worst times finding jobs.
That's true.
And in any kind of a hot economy, you're always going to find people who are on the top getting the best and the best.
Right.
And then you have everybody below who gets whatever is left over.
Right. And our economy is changing. The kinds of jobs that are becoming available are changing. I want to talk about that just now, an article that I saw in the Wall Street Journal just the other day. But before we dive into that, what we're talking about here, hopefully is ringing some chimes for the folks who are watching the show. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that if you have any questions about what Sumant and I are talking about, send us in a query. Send an email to us at info@referencepointtv.com. We'll get those questions answered. We'll point you in a direction. We'll see if we can help you out. Maybe you know someone, maybe you have kids, maybe you have grandkids, maybe you're just interested in this arena. But do that. But let's go back to this. I was looking at this article that talked about the way that careers are changing in the country, and over the last, I don't know, really since the recession, but even before that, when we had this substantial outpouring of manufacturing jobs from the United States to other parts of the world. And they talk about there being different kinds of jobs, routine jobs and non-routine jobs. They talked about, here, how do they say that? They classify jobs by whether their tasks are routine or non-routine, and also whether the work is cognitive or manual. So you'd have a routine manual job like tightening the lug nuts on the cars that's going down the assembly line, or whatever, administrative work where you're typing forms and things like that. Then you have manual, non-routine, where maybe it's a repair person going into a home is trying to figure out what's going on, or a construction company or whatnot. And then you have the cognitive stuff where you have to really figure out something, and sometimes it's repetitive and sometimes it's not repetitive. But the point of this study was that our job market in the United States is going away from the routine stuff to the non-routine, more the cognitive, more the things you have to think through rather than just manually do on a repetitive basis. And that seems to me to be speaking directly to what you were talking about relative to if you're not graduating from high school, or you may or may not want to go on to college, you may want to go to a trade school, but if you're not graduating from high school, your opportunities from getting jobs in this country are greatly diminished.
Right, Dave. And there's another thing too. I read in the Time magazine in the last 2 years that although there's all this hue and cry about manufacturing jobs actually leaving the country, there are quite a few manufacturing jobs still in this country. The productivity has actually gone up, but the companies have achieved that by using robots.
Yes.
And so what that really means and translates for the workforce is the workforce gets paid better if they know how to use those robots.
Right.
So that means they need to be skilled.
Yes.
So unfortunately, you go back to the same thing that somebody who's even either graduating or not graduating high school and graduating high school without actually having either college-ready or career-ready skills, and we'll come to that in just a bit, they're at a huge disadvantage.
Right.
Because they don't know how to handle the equipment.
Okay. So now let's get back to K-12 counts.
Okay.
Because we have a foundation. We understand that there's a problem. And your book that you had written for a completely different purpose kind of shed light on or opened up an awareness of the depth and scope of this kind of challenge that we just talked about. So where does K-12 counts come into play, and what's the objective? What's the mission here?
Okay. Dave, I'm going to again go back, because I want to put certain other things in perspective for you as well. I'm going to share an experience with you. I was in our local post office in my mailbox, and this is on a Saturday morning, so it's much relaxed, and I was just sorting through my mail, and one of my, I guess, a neighbor walked in, and she also pulled out her mail, and we were standing in front of each other and sorting our mail. So obviously we got talking. And after about 2 or 3 minutes into the conversation, we were talking about a local school, and she says to me that her daughter is in that school, and her daughter is dating the captain of one of the sport teams. Now, and she said it with a lot of pride, and I was thinking that you shouldn't be proud of the fact that her daughter is dating a captain of a school team. She should tell me with pride that my daughter is actually athletically so brilliant or talented that she's the captain, or she's going off on state championships or something.
Right.
It is not an achievement to be dating a school captain.
Interesting.
And so
completely different perspective. Yes.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. So when I was researching the book Raising Yourself, I got this repeatedly from adults, and oftentimes from women, that the parents never set any expectations. Never set any expectations, never said even once, finish high school or go to college or make something out of your life.
Right.
So if you have a mom at home telling her daughter that, and children love to do things to please their parents.
Yes, they do.
So if the daughter figures out that if I get a boyfriend, mom's going to be happy, then I'm off the hook for the things which really count in life.
But they're not even thinking about it that way, the things that really count in life.
That's right.
Because they don't see that perspective.
No, they don't see that perspective. So it's for the parent to do that. And so all these events then led me to thinking along the lines that I need to do something from a different perspective. Because there's huge conversation around how do we increase high school graduation, how do we get students into STEM, how do we get them into some other skilled classes and pursue science and math and everything else in between.
Right.
But you have to go back and take a step and see what is the message at home.
So we're talking about going to root causes.
That's right.
Because there are so many different programs that are out there, government programs from the federal, at the state, at the local level, intended to try to help children in their education so that they can have a better path as far as their career goes. And we could name them, and there's just like, it never ends. And then we keep pouring money into those cycles. But you've pointed to a component here that really digs right down to the foundation of why it is and how it could be impacted to help a young person
Mm-hmm.
see a different opportunity for themselves. And you're saying that that comes from the parents. I think that's
And that
wonderful.
comes from the parents, and that is where the whole idea of K-12 popped into my mind, that K-12 counts main resources stay-at-home parents.
Stay-at-home parents.
Yes. And you may wonder, how is it that I'm going to find these stay-at-home parents? Well, let me share certain stories with you. Since my book has been out in 2001, and the so-called educated parents who read the book, and especially the stay-at-home, they approached me and said, can you hire us? Can we do something?
How can I get involved?
How can I get involved? How can I help?
You know, I want to actually pull up another graphic because this ties back into some of the things I was looking at when I was up on your website, something that you call the virtuous circle, because that ties right in here. And you were talking about working with the parents who are stay-at-home and et cetera. And the idea is that K-12, and I'm going to paraphrase here, and you help me if I go wrong. K-12 counts as an entity is going to be able to to offer employment opportunities to parents, right, who maybe stay at home, whatever, and may want to do something and give back. That gives them the opportunity to contribute, which then helps to break this cycle of what you're talking about with people who don't have the skill set to help their children. Because these parents that you're bringing on into the fold, into the employment side, are going to counsel the others. And then that will in turn help those young people and possibly those parents be able to find more career opportunities and whatever.
That's right. And really going down deeper, it's going to be customized solution for that one child. So it'll be a parent coach who'll work with the parents, work with the teen or the child, because we're going to catch them early. If you have to break the cycle, you have to catch them early.
Right.
So we're not talking about 9th and 10th grade or something. We're talking about really this is K through 12.
Right.
So we start as early as we can. We get a foot in the door, and then also what will happen is, as these children, if they don't fall behind, they will continue to do better and better. Because
Right.
one of the major causes for dropping out of high school is falling behind
Right.
and failing in school.
Ah.
And so if they start failing in school and they go 1 or 2 grades behind, they're in trouble.
You know, we're going to talk. I want to talk about that some more. But before we get into this, I want to mention to the folks that we are actually going to roll this conversation into a second episode of Reference Point. And in our second episode, we've got another person that's going to join us remotely to talk more about this, Cynthia Lee, who's going to be able to shed a little bit more light on this area of childhood development and whatever. But I think, Sumant, what you mentioned is really interesting to me in that the falling behind, because there's in the public school system at the elementary school level, if a child is coming into the school and the child does not have English really well, you know, they may or may not get the kind of attention they need to be able to help them evolve. Their parents may not know English very well. Okay.
Yeah. So
It's a vicious circle.
Right. That's right. And in fact, let me share an experience with you. In our school, in my county, in Santa Clara County, there happens to be a program for helping students get caught up with their math and their English. And so I volunteered to go for the reading or the English part of it. And I was sitting in orientation, so here's the student sitting in front of me, here's the tutor of the day for this particular student. And this student happens to be in 9th grade. And so here we start the class now, the 45 minutes or so, the class period time for her to get help with her English. 9th grade student, so she starts reading. C-A-T, cat, M-A-I-N, main. I almost fell off the chair. I was thinking, you're in 9th grade. You're reading way many grades behind.
Oh yeah, of course.
When are you going to catch up? If you're already in 9th grade, you will not understand the questions that are being asked in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th.
No way.
And then, of course, SAT right after that. So where are you going to catch up? And why was this not caught ahead of time? And how did you get into 9th grade?
You know, you had mentioned something to me the other day when we were talking about the show, how you had been communicating with someone at the college level, I think it was, that was looking at the question, the remedial education that a lot of new college students have to go through to catch up to the fundamentals so that they can really pass the entrance criteria to get into the universities is pretty ridiculous. And you were telling me that something about the average points behind or
Firstly, a lot of the students who graduate high school show up and they take the college admission placement test, and they find out that they're 3 or 4 grades behind.
3 or 4 grades behind, which means 3 or 4 years of education.
And then this person that was sharing this data with me asked me, how many years do I think it takes for that person to get caught up,
Right.
to undo those 4 years of not having learned the basic concepts? And I took a random guess of about 3 years, and that is wrong. It takes 6 years.
Takes 6 years.
So here
So
you
if you're
have
3 years or so behind, it's going
Yes.
to take you 6 years to catch up. Wow.
And when are you going to do college?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's almost like a medical program in getting just the basics.
Just to get
So
Listen, we've got just a few minutes, well, actually less than 2 minutes left in this segment of the show. And so what we've really done is we've laid a foundation for what the challenge is. And when we get into the next segment, we want to talk more about what the solution is going to be. The one thing I do want to call people's attention to is an article that you mentioned to me, because I think it helps them understand some other stuff. We may talk more about this at the next show, but it's from an organization called Child Trends, and I think we're going to put their website up on the screen right now, because there's this article about how caring adults are important for positive child well-being. And when I read this, it was after you and I had first had some conversations about what it is that you're doing with K-12. And then I realized that when this thing came out, which was 2013, it was like, holy mackerel, these things are major issues, and you're not the only one talking about it, which is actually very cool. But you have a solution.
yes, that's right.
So we have maybe 30 seconds left in this show. Is there anything else you want to say at the moment about what we're going to talk about come the next episode?
Well, I have an outside-in perspective, and that helps a lot.
And
Because I
that's-
grew up in India, where education is very important, because without education, we are nothing.
Right.
And it's very hard to get jobs because it's a highly competitive economy. And that's exactly what's happening here and happening worldwide.
And happening worldwide, and I like that outside-in perspective. So that's it for now, and ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next time on Reference Point, and stay tuned for this next segment. It's going to be incredible.
Thank you, Dave.